Chapter 1278, Reminder. See God's identity, level, and strength. Hearing Mr. Fool's example, Alger's mind went blank for nearly 2 seconds. This was something that he had never dreamed of. From his point of view, by obtaining the authority of sea god through Jam and Sparrow and replacing Calvatua, Mr. Fool had obtained a stable and large number of believers. This was a crucial step for his recovery. Therefore, this secret existence definitely wouldn't give up on the corresponding identity. To his surprise, at that moment, he actually heard Mr. Fool inform everyone that the sea god's identity, level, and strength could be exchanged. After further recovery, Mr. Fool no longer needs the identity of an entity at the level of sea god, as well as the corresponding believers. This is the performance of a great existence. Something that isn't qualified is only used temporarily, never monopolized. Alger first sighed inwardly before feeling excited. He felt that Mr. Fool's words were directed at him. In the Church of Storms, he had relied on external forces to become a sequence for demigod. Although he barely managed to rise up to the brass, it was almost impossible for him to advance any further. As for the theft of the Book of Calamity, he couldn't see any hopes of doing so at the moment. Therefore, Alger could only temporarily suppress his ambition and patiently wait for the opportunity to arrive. Now the opportunity was here, and it came fast. Alger was currently a cardinal of the Church of the Lord of Storms in charge of the Rorstad archipelago. Once he secretly became sea god and controlled the authority of those waters, he would become the king of the Rorstad archipelago, a true king. With this in mind, Alger nearly couldn't contain himself. It took him a great deal of difficulty to calm himself down. Although Audrey, Derek, and company couldn't hide their shock that the Tarot Club was beginning to trade the identity, level, and strength of a deity, even if it was only a false god, they didn't have any intentions of switching to the storm pathway. Compared to Alger, they weren't that excited. They quickly controlled themselves and cast their gazes at Mr. Hanged Man. Alger took a deep breath and humbly said to the end of the long bronze table, "Honorable Mr. Fool, what price is needed to exchange for these items?" The Fool Klein was waiting for the Hanged Man's question and said with a smile, "The missions I shall give you, as well as frequent praying and the sincere making of wishes." What he wanted to emphasize were the words towards the end of the sentence, but he believed that the members of the Tarot Club wouldn't be able to tell. As for how he could complete the corresponding wishes, he currently had 2 methods. First, he used the other Beyonder powers he possessed to achieve the corresponding effects. For example, he could summon historical scenes and repeat the segment of gifting beer to fulfill the wish of the bar owner treating the patron. Second, he could directly grant a relatively low-level wish with his accumulated power of wishes and create a true miracle. For example, using a snap to cause the collapsed house to instantly return to its original state, succeeding in rebuilding it in the full spirit of the wish. In addition, Klein could use Sephra Castle's level and powers above the gray fog that was equivalent to a king of angels who had yet to accommodate a uniqueness. In other words, when he responded to prayers, he could use the core powers of a sequence one, which was also the core power of the Attendant of Mysteries. After this period of experimentation, Klein had a rough idea of the 2 effects. The first was to create a nascent divine kingdom, and the second was grafting. The term grafting was coined by Klein himself. After all, he wasn't a real Attendant of Mysteries, nor did he obtain the corresponding mysticism knowledge. This ability could allow an object that couldn't be directly connected under normal circumstances to achieve an inconceivable effect by grafting. A simple example was to mix the concept of the beginning and the end of a path into one common node, making it impossible for anyone who walked that path to leave. To Beyonders, there were quite a number of powers that could do something like that, but an Attendant of Mysteries, grafting, directly acted on a concept itself. Not only was it at a very high level, like the descent of a true deity, but its effects were bizarre and had a hint of concealment. In addition to the replication powers of the Grade 0 sealed artifact, the Staff of the Stars, Klein could completely respond to prayers like a king of angels while inside Sephra Castle. Furthermore, he could do more things. Upon hearing Mr. Fool mention missions, Alger suddenly recalled something. He hurriedly lowered his head and asked, "Honorable Mr. Fool, do you still need me to carry out further investigations regarding the 3 targets of the Fasak Empire that participated in the Konotop Sea battle?" He had previously obtained information regarding the 3 suspected owners of creeping hunger, but he hadn't found anything abnormal. The fool Klein nodded slightly and said, "There's no need for that anymore." He originally wanted to use this clue to grab the tail of the Twilight Hermit Order, but since Adam had likely become a god, it was better to avoid doing so. Respecting a sequence, zero true deity, was Klein's usual principle. He had to compromise and give up if necessary. Without waiting for Alger to speak again, the fool Klein said in a relaxed tone, "Your current mission is to cooperate with the sea god believers and settle down the people who have left the forsaken land of the gods." "Your wish is my will," Alger replied without hesitation. This made Derek silently heave a sigh of relief. He no longer had any doubts, hesitations, or worries about the subsequent developments. He had full trust in Mr. Hanged Man's ability to handle matters. At this moment, the fool Klein looked around and smiled. Apart from the sea god's identity, level, and strength, there are many things that can be exchanged for. For example, the imperative mage potion formula and Beyonder characteristic. He didn't list down too many examples so as to prevent himself from damaging the fool's standing. As for having said so much, it could be explained away that Mr. Fool was in a good mood from having taken another step towards recovery. Moon City had been passed down the heritage of an imperative mage, something Klein could exchange for when granting them the wish of being saved. Of course, even if he directly made the residents of Moon City sacrifice the corresponding items, the people who had finally found his blessings and protection would definitely be very willing to do so. They were more afraid that Mr. Fool would abandon Moon City and not accept their sacrifice. Apart from that, Klein himself had a silver knight marionette. The Seer Pathways sequence 9 to 3 Beyonder characteristics, the sealed artifact, General of the Pupilless Eye, a drop of the primordial moon's blessed blood, and various kinds of charms and bullets that came from worms of spirit. If the wishmaker wanted a consumable or something for a temporary loan, Klein could even take out more from the historical void. The imperative mage's potion formula and Beyonder characteristic. Zio inexplicably felt that Mr. Fool was looking at her. To be frank, she lacked the motivation to advance. On the one hand, she was only one of the mid to high-ranking members of MI9, so the chances of getting a ticket to the ranks of a demigod were very low. On the other hand, her father's reputation had been restored to a certain extent, so she had no pressing goals. At the same time, the war had ended. Her mother and brother had returned to Backland and were about to start a normal life. With Zio's current overall income, it was enough to support a wealthy family. All of these reasons made Zio feel that her current life was pretty good, and she didn't really want to change it. Of course, if she had the chance to advance to the demigod level, she wouldn't let it go. Due to the war, she had experienced the helplessness of a Sequence 5. Furthermore, in the Tarot Club, aside from her and Fours, everyone else was a demigod. There was no doubt that she didn't want to fall behind that much. Amidst her thoughts, Zio looked at Fours before bowing her head to the entity at the end of the long modeled table to indicate that she would work hard. Fours could roughly guess her friend's attitude because it was roughly the same for her. If it wasn't because she needed to advance to Sequence 4 to effectively resist the full moon ravings, so as to stop troubling Mr. Fool, as well as the Abraham family having prepared the potion formula and Beyonder ingredients for her, she wasn't in a rush to become a secret sorcerer. As a traveler, she could go wherever she wanted. She could immediately head to a location to eat whatever delicacy she wanted. It completely satisfied For's initial expectations of being a Beyonder. Of course, she had another motivating factor to improve herself. After becoming a demigod, she could further help her teacher and family. Seeing the fog-covered Mr. Fool leaning back into his chair, Audrey didn't say another word. After some hesitation, she opened her mouth and said, "Ladies and gentlemen, I have a question. If there's a matter, and you're aware that its outcome has nothing to do with you at all, with it solely being the result of the feelings and gambling of certain existences, what will you do?" Just as she said that, Alger laughed. Everyone is destined to die. It's inevitable no matter how hard you try to change that. Then, does that mean one's life is meaningless? He seemed to have long since thought of this problem before adding, since you can't change the outcome of the matter at the moment, then try your best to improve yourself, obtain more power, and wield more authority until, one day, you can participate in the gambling. If you die during this process, it's better than not doing anything. That's the most sincere words Mr. Hanged Man has ever said. It seems to come from his heart. The insignificant can also become great. Audrey was touched and nodded indiscernibly. At this moment, the World Jayman Sparrow looked around and spoke. Everyone, I have something to remind you of. When the Tarot Club members looked over at the same time, Klein controlled the world and said in a deep voice, "The apocalypse will arrive in about a decade. There's a possibility for everyone to be destroyed, including the deities.